we're going to continue our series this morning. We've chosen to follow the spiritual guide, and it's out in the lobby, and it's a lovely journal. My daughter asked, are there still more copies? My boss at work wants one. I'm like, yeah, I think there are a few more out there. So we're going to continue our February series, which is All the Colors of Love. Reverend Jill talked about God, for the love of God, and I'm going to talk about that individual love, that the body is not an apology. It's something that we can celebrate, our uniqueness and our individuality. And in the very first bit, Louise Hay says, "You have been criticizing yourself for years and it hasn't worked." Well, isn't that the truth? So try approving of yourself and see what happens. So we're going to dive in, and the book that was the motivation for this month's topic is The Body is Not an Apology. It's by Sonia Renee Taylor, and she's got some good points in here, and we're going to talk about them. 3 things that I wanted to point out today is this idea of radical self-love. What is radical self-love? Is it the little s, the radical self, the little person, the self, or is it the big self? Radical self-love. I don't know. We're going to get into that. And, to look past our imperfections and things. And then we're also going to look at oneness. This body of God. You and me and all of that goes into it. So we're going to look at oneness. And then we're going to look at that radical love, the big S, and see how can we take that love out into the universe? How can we fulfill that global CSL mission, which is a world that works for all? A world that works for you and for me, for the person at the bank or the person who cut us off in traffic, but a world that really works for all. And then the last thing I'm going to wrap up this morning is we're going to do a rose ceremony. So everybody who came here this morning, I'm going to invite you to step into this commitment of love for ourselves and for the beauty that is and how the divine is showing up. So that's going to be the tail end of my talk. So let's start with all the colors of love. For me, that is a metaphor. It's a metaphor for the individualized expressions of love. All the different ways and shapes that we show up. There isn't a one-size-fits-all. We didn't come out of a factory, stamped out, molded just perfectly like automatrons. No, we showed up individually, unique. Just as we are. We are the vehicle, this vessel, this instrument through which the divine expresses. It is unique. It's as unique as like these stones, these individual stones on my pen. It has some perceived imperfections, but it is unique. And it's perfect. God has organized itself in perfect order and perfect harmony. There are galaxies and sunlight. There's gravity. There's blades of grass and ladybugs. And everything in between. All the colors for love is a metaphor for being individualized. There's a quote by Ernest Holmes that we believe in the individualization of spirit within us, and that all people are individualizations of this one spirit. Unique, perfect, and different. I love it. The book, The Body is Not an Apology by Sonia Renee Taylor, she talks about radical self-love, that it can be a healing balm for all those wounds we encounter in life, all those hurts and criticisms that we might face, either inflicted by ourselves or inflicted by society. But radical self-love can be that healing balm that opens our hearts and helps us realize who we are. She said we should stop apologizing for our bodies, that it's perfect just the way it is. Short or tall, big or small. We're all vessels of the divine, unique and individualized. But what I found really interesting in her book was what she called the 3 pieces. The first is make peace with not understanding. Not understanding. Well, okay, we don't have to have everything figured out. We don't have to have everything known to us. You can still honor and request those things that you don't understand. Maybe you don't understand someone's choices, or why they picked that car and not that car. Why are they wearing those shoes? We don't have to understand it all. It's like understanding quantum physics or the shelf life of a Twinkie. We can still honor and respect those things, but we don't have to understand them. The second piece is make peace with difference. Humans come in all shapes and sizes. We've said that, and it's important to celebrate our diversity. And we hear often, well, aren't we all the same? No, we aren't all the same. We've come from the same place, from the same source, and we're part of the human family. But we are not all the same. The late poet and activist Audre Lorde said, "It is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize and accept and celebrate those differences." I found a fascinating little story in Sonia's book. She talked about poodle science. You guys can go home and Google it. It's a cute little video, it's a cartoon, and it's lovely. And in it, they talk about poodles being the wisest of the breed, thinking that they know everything there is about weight. And it's a poke at the medical community that one size does not fit all. The poodles think that, oh yeah, there's some small poodles and some big poodles and some tall poodles and some wide poodles, but they're all poodles. Well, no, they're not. They're Labradors and they're Great Danes and they're Chihuahuas and they're mutts. They're all different breeds. They're all different inside. So what is the point of this? It's to acknowledge that we are different, but we still come from the same source. So the third piece is make peace with your body. Yeah, like Louise says, we can criticize it all day till the cows come home, but that doesn't do us any good. We arrived on this planet as love. That's where we came from. That's who we are. We came here to do love, to think love, to speak love, to be love. We didn't arrive here hating our bodies, popping out of the womb saying, oh gosh, I didn't like that experience. All of those messages that we fill our minds with are learned. They're internalized and they're repeated over and over again. She talked in the book about body shame and body terrorism. Some of those put downs, that negative self-talk that we fill our heads with, or buying into the images of somebody else's ideal, of fitting into the mold, so to speak, squeezing it all in. Well, that doesn't work either. She remarked that making peace with our bodies is not suddenly waking up one morning and liking your thighs. It really is awakening to who we really are, which is God expressing. Some of her affirmations in the book are, my body is my ally. It's my friend. It's that thing that travels with me, that houses my spirit, my soul. Or I have the body I need to live my best life. Not her best life or his best life, but to live my best life. I have the vehicle to do that. And I am the vessel of self-love. I picked this quote from the book that I want to share with you. Radical self-love is deeper, wider, and more expansive than anything we would call self-confidence or self-esteem. It is juicier than self-acceptance. Including the word radical offers a self-love that is the root or origin of our relationship to ourselves. Well, what is that word radical? I tell you, I tripped over that word for the last 3 weeks. Radical, radical, radical. No, to me, radical was way out there. It was separate from me. It was extreme. It was intense. Sometimes it's filled with anger. It's removed from me. But Sonia touched on something, and I looked up the definition. The root of the word radical, radix, R-A-D-I-X, means the root, or the core, or the essence. So going to the root of the matter. When we practice radical self-love, or radical love, it is getting to the root of it. It is uncovering, getting beyond all of those flaws and perceived ideas we have about ourselves. It's getting to the core, the underneath, radical, to the core, the matter, the root. It is awakening to love. When we can be radical, we are awakening to love. When we love, nurture, and care for ourselves, we are loving, nurturing, and caring for God. When we are peaceful, kind, and caring to one another, we are peaceful, kind, and caring to God. It's the same thing. In Science of Mind, we believe in oneness. That the root and the source of all is God. Ernest Holmes, the founder of Science of Mind, has this quote: "We believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause. This one manifests itself in and through all creation, but is not absorbed by its creation. The manifest universe is the body of God. The manifest universe is the body of God. It is the logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self-knowingness of God." That's a big statement, but I want to unpack it a little bit. Let's break it down. There's only one God. And Gina read it in her affirmation this morning. There's only one life. That life is God, and that life is my life now. Everything in the manifest universe, that includes you and me and everyone in this room and everyone on this planet and everything in the cosmos. We are one. We are one organism. When we express, proclaim, and declare radical self-love for ourselves, we awaken and remember that God is all there is, exactly as it is. And then we get to the line, God is knowing itself through us. That is the infinite self-knowingness of God. God knowing itself through us. The infinite self-knowingness of God. Life, God, whatever you call this universal mind, is experiencing all of the accomplishments, the joys, the sorrows, everything we experience, it is experiencing through us. I want to take a look at something that is happening in the world right now called the coronavirus. Now, before you guys all get panicked, you know, I know it can be a scary thing, but there is no good or bad in God. Remember all that. So I want to talk about the coronavirus. But perhaps we can look at it as an illustration. It's an illustration of our unique and profound connection to one another. It started with one person in one town, in one small place, and it spread, and it grew, and it traveled. Our modern technology has shown us that, as of yesterday, it had spread to 22 countries and over 35,000 cases. We can see very clearly how things expand and multiply very quickly. What that data doesn't tell us is that there are a number of people who had contact with those infected and did not get sick. It doesn't show the love and the compassion. That's a harder thing to map in our modern technology. They can track those other things, but let's envision that love is present and expands. I'd like to share another little story, and I love this story. It's called, Is the Buddha on the Bus? One day, just outside of Paris, there are 50 monks, and they are traveling in 3 buses. And Thich Nhat Hanh, they call him Tay, he's a Vietnamese monk, he's on the bus, and they get on and off at several villages. And after one stop, one of his attendants said, Is the Buddha on the bus? Well, the other attendant said, well, yeah, sure he is. He said, well, can you be sure? And he said, well, yes, I think so. Wanting to know if the Buddha is on the bus is not a difficult task. Because if one person is breathing mindfully, breathing in and out consciously, we can know and sense that Buddha is on the bus. If not one, but 2, 3, 4, or 5 people are breathing mindfully, we can be assured that Buddha is on the bus. And if 50 people on 3 buses are breathing mindfully, enjoying the landscape, breathing mindfully, isn't that a wonderful thing? We can all practice mindfulness. We can recognize the power and the presence of love right where we are. We can make a difference across vast distances by being and expressing love. It can show up on one of those maps, okay? When we show love to our families, our coworkers, our communities, when we practice radical self-love, we are connecting as one. So wrapping up, I realize that and want to share that we can be a powerful change in the world. Radical self-love is looking past our imperfections to see the root of the matter, which is God. We can know oneness, that the manifest universe is the body of God, that we're all unique expressions, and it's God, loving God, right where we are. We can practice radical love through mindfulness, and we can be the peace, love, joy, compassion that we want to see in the world. This week, in practicing the presence, I'm going to return back to Sonia Renee Taylor and her 3 affirmations. My body is my ally. I have the body I need to live my best life. And I am a vessel for self-love. At this time, I'm going to ask the ushers if they would come forward. And I would like us to share in this rose ceremony that came from Ernest Holmes. It's a commitment ceremony. And as the ushers come up, they're going to be handing you a red rose. Ernest tells us that love is the givingness of self. Whoops. Okay. Go ahead. You pass them all out. Yeah, there we go. Love is the givingness of self to the object of its adoration. We should learn to love all people, not just some people, but all people. This frees us to love all, adore some, and find happiness everywhere. Today, we have the opportunity through the practice of this ritual to step into a commitment of love. This is not only for those who are in a relationship or for looking for a relationship. Yes. If God is love and God is all love, truly is God is an expression in us and as us. This is our Valentine's gift to you. It is a symbol that has rich and ancient history. And like the cross, it can have a paradoxical meaning. It is at once a symbol of purity and a symbol of passion and virginity, of fertility, of death, and of life. The rose is the flower of the goddess Venus, and it is also a symbol of the blood of her lover Adonis. It is a symbol of transmutation, of taking food from the earth and transmuting it into the beautiful, fragrant flower you have holding in your hands. I'd like you to take a moment and focus on it. Let's focus on the transmutation of transforming any fear to faith, and ultimately to love as we commit to being love itself. In the language of flowers, a red rose is a symbol for love. Look at the flower you hold. Notice its petals. Some are perfect, some are not. Some may be bent or broken. Does your rose have thorns? Maybe carefully touch the thorn, realizing how it protects the rose. Notice its velvet-like texture of the petals and the sharp contrast of the thorn. You can smell your rose and delight in its fragrance, just as God delights in us. Look at your rose as a representation, a symbol of love from God. I invite you to close your eyes and silently say to yourself, I commit myself fully to be love. I commit myself fully to be love. I am committed to making love my priority. You may open your eyes. In the spirit of spreading love, I invite you to exchange your rose with another person. Take a moment and just look around the room and exchange your rose. How different is this rose from the one you gave away? Is it just as red? Notice its petals. Does it have thorns? Is its fragrance just as sweet? How is it the same and how is it different? I invite you once again to close your eyes and silently say to yourself with this new rose, I commit myself fully to be love. I commit myself fully to be love. I am committed to making love my priority. Breathe in this beautiful fragrance and open your eyes and look again once at your rose. Know that you hold in your hand a precious representation of God. It is love in the form of a rose. It, like you, was first a divine idea in the mind of God. It is created from the only substance that exists, pure spirit, pure love. Take this symbol with you this week and as a reminder of your commitment to be love. Please join me in an affirmative prayer. And as I recognize the power and the presence of love right here in this very room, I just know that God is expressing uniquely and individually as each person gathered here and within the sound of my voice, all divine emanations of the One. I give thanks for love and peace and joy of breathing mindfully. I know that God is expressing uniquely and individually as me, and it is expressing individually as each and every person here. I speak my word on behalf of this community, on behalf of each individual who showed up here this morning. I celebrate their diversity, their uniqueness, knowing that they are interwoven into this cosmic whole. I celebrate all the unique ways that Spirit shows up. And I celebrate how each of us distributes and circulates that uniqueness in the world. I am so grateful for this essence of love. My heart is filled to overflowing. I release this prayer unto the action of universal law, knowing that it is already done as spoken. I let it go and let it be. And together we say, and so it is.